Hello.
Hey.
We're joining you from I don't know where Mars or something
Mm,
today. The Super Bowl is over. It's been what 2 weeks since you've gotten to see our
mm,
pretty faces,
mhm.
and so we're just gonna rehash the Super Bowl a little bit. Talk I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, maybe an hour about football, and maybe get into a little college basketball possibly, or who
B-ball.
knows.
Maybe
Um,
some tennis.
yeah,
Is tennis still a sport? A thing?
it's still a sport.
Is
They
it?
just had the Australian Open.
Oh, hmm,
Uh, yeah, and
interesting.
it's like cold here in the Australian
Mm,
Open. It's like 120 on the court over
mm.
there because it's summer. But
That
yeah,
sounds nice.
maybe we'll pick into tennis later, but I don't really know which
Great.
tournaments are coming up. Uh, okay.
Mm.
So there was a game last
Just
this
one.
this past weekend on Sunday, and it
Mm.
was the most important game of the year.
Yes.
And one team knew the overtime rules and the other team didn't know the overtime rules.
So, do you think that was that everybody's killing Shanahan for that, and his decision to take the
So
you?
I was listening to the radio and I came into a conversation, whatever, got in my car, and it was kind of halfway through. And then they
Yeah.
started talking about the analytics. They're saying
Okay.
the analytics tell you to take the ball even in that format, which I actually wasn't surprised by that, because if you take the ball, let's just say you have a fluke fumble or
Yeah.
something happens, throw a pick, tipped ball, at least you know that you're selling out and the other team can't score at all. Whereas like the Niners took the ball, almost scored a touchdown, kicked a field goal.
Yeah.
Now if like same thing, tip ball from the Chiefs or like a fluke fumble, someone punches it out, game's over, right? Like
Yep.
you don't, that's it. So in a way, I get it from that respect, but the clutch factor with Mahomes just definitely changes it. And the fact that their players, like none of them knew the rule when they did the coin flip, their captains, I mean, that kind of tells you something.
But assuming they knew that it's not like they're the ones who were deciding that decision during the coaches would have had to have told them,
Yeah, to take the ball for
Yeah.
sure.
So
And I still don't know if Shanahan knew the rule or
I don't think
not.
he did. I thought I read stuff that said he didn't even know it.
And then they're interviewing the Chiefs guys, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, we had two presentations on it. We were reminded of it every couple
Yeah.
days." They're like, "Oh,
Well, I guess they act like you've been there before.
yeah." So here's what I think happened. You remember when Andy Reid was like the worst time
Oh my God.
manager?
Yeah, in Philly. That killed him in Philly.
I
Killed him.
think he was like, "All right, I need to get this stuff fixed. Like the little stuff, I need to figure this out,
Yeah.
or else, it's not going to be
Philly, yeah.
good." So I think maybe there's more emphasis on it when you screw it up.
I mean, I don't want to sidebar us now, but his reputation has certainly changed. I mean, you win 3 Super Bowls. But if you think about what he was, even just at the beginning of his KC journey, that was his legacy. Mismanaged, game mismanagement, time mismanagement, sure, offensive genius, but couldn't pull it together on the field. Yeah, completely rewritten. I think the mistake was kicking the field goal in overtime, not going for the time. That I think was the problem.
I forget. So they were like inside the 10, but was
They
it
were
like
inside the 10.
what was it? Was it
It was like third or fourth. They were 3 or 4 yards. And they
fourth and goal from like the 4 or something?
Yeah, 4 or 3, something like that.
Yeah.
To me, that's it. Like you go for it because Mahomes. That's the whole thing. Mahomes, right? Mahomes is probably going to score, right, or like better than average that he is. Why put yourself in the position where you're like just go for it?
Yeah.
If I don't know. To me, that was the mistake. Not picking it, but yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, so the Chiefs, they played that game against Buffalo where the Chiefs got the ball, they scored, and that's why the rule changed. So I get why they definitely know what's going on.
Yep.
Yeah. And San Francisco, it's like, okay, what percentage of games actually go to overtime? Like less than 10%. It's like,
and Super Bowls, even like how many Super Bowls have gone to overtime?
yeah, well, the Patriots Falcons one did, which I didn't really remember.
I didn't either. I didn't realize that.
But
I thought they went
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to remember. I feel like you watch the Super Bowl, it's awesome, and then you just kind of flush it and don't really remember those details. But Yeah, I mean, I guess the Niners just had enough other stuff to worry about with trying to stop
Guys,
who's a guy on a trajectory to be the greatest of all time now, has a legitimate shot. Granted, he'd have to win like
gotta win 4 more.
a Super Bowl every other year for the next 8 years, and then he'll be like mid to late 30s, and then he'll only have tied Brady. So like, yeah, he's got a chance, but I don't think you realize, like injuries and
Yeah.
age and all that. Like,
And Reed is not like when they started that journey, Belichick was in his late 40s, early 50s. Reed's at almost 70. He's in his mid
that's
60s.
true.
So he's not going to be how is Matt Nagy going to lead Pat Mahomes to force? I don't think so.
Eberflus is coming over. And yeah, I mean, Kelsey's what, 35, 36?
I mean, there's got to be talk about him retiring, right? He's
Yeah.
34 because he's the same age as Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's like seriously considering it, but there's a lot of people saying that, well, he didn't get to 1,000 yards. People are saying he's definitely slowing down. I don't know. They just kind of had a down year overall in the regular season where some teams just took him away and
Yeah.
they were just struggling. I don't know. So
there were some Gronk a lot of Gronk comparisons over the last few days. And then I saw if they were his actual stats on TikTok, because some of that stuff is bullshit. He compares quite favorably to Gronk in terms of just raw stats. Gronk has way more touchdowns and the other Super Bowl. But other than that, like Kelsey had more yards, but very, very similar statistically.
yeah, it's kind of funny how like Kelsey came out and he's before the Super Bowl and he's like saying how Kittle is clearly the best tight end in the league, which makes sense because Kelsey doesn't really block. Kittle is an incredible blocker and can catch the ball, so he's just complete. And I mean, that's what he said, tight end, if you're a complete tight end, that's what you do. And then Gronk comes out and says, I forget how he worded it, but he's like, Kelsey is the best, I think he said best receiving tight end in the history of the league or whatever. So they're all just kind of patting each other on the back. It's happy stuff.
I buy that argument though, right? Like the complete holistic player is the better player than the specialist.
Yeah, and like Kittle could catch a lot more passes. Obviously, the Niners have so many weapons.
Yeah,
so that's
part of it down there though, because he was on my fantasy team and did crap. Although, like again, statistically, Kittle was up there for tight ends.
Right, but he just goes like games without doing much because it's just not what they need to do.
Games. That's right. Like he'll have 3 touchdowns and then for the next 4 weeks. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, you're good. I wasn't gonna say anything important anyway.
Everything you say is important. Drive the podcast, dude.
So, you're watching the whatever. I went to a Super Bowl party and there was like 10 or 12 of us, and you're talking to people during commercials or when the play's not really going on. So so my wife actually played the Greenlaw injury back for me. So I actually saw how it happened. Yeah. I had heard it was a non-contact thing, but I just thought he kind of like crumbled. Did you see it?
I didn't, but that's what when Debo injured, he just sort of collapsed after that. But no, I didn't see what happened to Greenlaw. Just heard that it happened.
Greenlaw was like celebrating and about to go onto the field after, I forget what the play was. And he like tried to like jump and like start running forward, and his left leg it looked like his ankle just kind of turned a little bit. But no, I mean, that was his Achilles popping. And it was like, how, like, there's probably some sort of weakness in it because that motion, no matter what, shouldn't make you pop your Achilles. But I mean, that was such a huge injury for the Niners. I don't know if you saw the stat, but they showed his replacement gave up 9 for 9 passes, completions, and a touchdown after he went out. And like Greenlaw is, I mean, I'm no expert on this, but I think he's probably a top 5 linebacker in the NFL, top 10 for sure.
Yeah,
and that just changes things immensely. So I mean, that was a huge thing. Debo's hamstring, like he came back in, I think, on adrenaline alone, and was able to do a couple things, but that changes things. He was out for quite a few plays, so I don't know. I guess looking back on the line and the Niners being favored, like it kind of did make sense if they stay healthy. I mean, it's still.
Did they win that game?
I don't know. it's still probably close. Does Mahomes still pull it out? I don't really know, but it was so the Chiefs kicked a field goal at the towards the like right at basically at the end of regulation,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
To tie it.
that's right.
So their backs were against the wall there too. Like I keep saying, dude, if they fumble or throw a pick, this game's over. Like the Niners
Yeah.
were that close, and then in overtime, same thing, right? Like
They got down to the
a
4-yard line.
turnover.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then did you see the side by side of the game winning touchdown play? It was
No.
the exact same play they ran against Philly last year.
Was it really?
Yeah. The Niners
No, I
actually,
didn't catch that.
the Niners actually had a guy sort of over there
Yeah.
covering it, but I mean he wasn't close. He was
No.
pretty much wide open. But when they ran it against Philly, I guess I didn't really remember that, but he was wide open. Like no one went with him.
No, one of the breakdowns that I saw online was like that in that for that series, that overtime series, and maybe for some of the fourth, third, maybe in third quarter, that the Niners were in man a lot, and then that was when they kind of lost the game, that they couldn't match up man to man, and then on that specific play they were in man and just didn't have the coverage right,
Yeah.
and they blew it.
So that was interesting. I don't
Huh.
know a lot about like defenses and well, I know what zone versus man
Yeah.
is, but like in the lead up to it, Rex Ryan was saying it's way easier for a team that plays mostly man to switch into zone than it
Mhm.
is vice versa.
Yeah.
And the Niners play mostly zone. So for them to switch into man because Mahomes usually carves up zone
Yeah.
was going to be hard.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Well, and then so the Greenlaw, and I'm sorry to drag us back a point, but the Greenlaw injury had an impact, but didn't Kansas City, didn't they lose two of their starting offensive linemen?
During the game?
No, before the game.
Well, Tooney was out for the AFC Championship game, but I guess I just assumed he was playing because
I
he
thought
had
he
2
was
weeks
out for
off
the championship. I thought he was out.
for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But he could have been. I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't too much gabbing and not enough paying attention to the details.
Yeah, too many apps.
Another thing, there's a lot of last show or whatever you want to call it. We were talking about how a lot of people hate Purdy and they don't think he's good because he just isn't like flashy. But Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, came out and said like he destroyed our zone looks. Like we thought we were
Yeah.
going to be able to kind of confuse him a little bit, and we didn't. So I thought that was interesting, and that kind of gives me perspective when I'm kind of one of those people. Well, I'm not a Purdy hater. I think he's really good, but I just don't understand, all the nuances of defenses and whatnot. So I thought that was interesting that Spagnuolo came out and gave him a lot of credit. But
I mean, I don't get the Purdy hate either. I do think and I think I mentioned this a few podcasts back that if they lose, like Shanahan's going to be QB shopping this offseason. He just strikes me as the kind of guy that's going to be like, nope, not me. It's got to be the QB. Got to find somebody else. That's the way I feel. Like if he could make a trade in the offseason for, I don't know, anybody else, like I bet he would. Like if he get
Really?
Justin Herbert, yeah.
so I don't know. I think that's stupid, but
I agree. I'm not. I don't. I think in this, the league has shown if you got a guy who's he's not competent, right? Competence isn't 4,000 yards. That exceeds the average by a fair margin. You stick with it, right? He's completely broken. I don't think he was completely broken, right? And this is his second year.
yeah. And
Second year.
His poise alone, like
Yes.
he's probably already looking back and studying what Mahomes did during that
Mhm.
game and trying to figure out what he can do a little bit better to be more clutch and whatnot. Because that's just like the type of person he seems like he is. But
I mean, he would be stupid. It would be stupid, I think. But just he strikes me as the type Shanahan.
yeah, so I think I said that I think that would be stupid, but I wouldn't be surprised either
Yeah.
if that happened. So
Would you fire Shanahan? Sorry, I know you have on the cusp of a point.
I mean, no.
I wouldn't either. But all the hate for him, it's like, oh, look, he lost 2 Super Bowls and an AFC champion or an NFC championship. It's like he's in the NFC championship game 5 years in a row, and he made the Super Bowl twice. Like, what the hell? You don't.
Well, that's the thing. I think free agency is going to hit the Niners pretty hard. Again, hard to keep track all that stuff, but they showed like hits against their salary cap, and they got a lot of their better players have big hits against the cap. So it sounded like Greenlaw was one that was they weren't going to be able to afford. Now it sounds like Ayuk is a little bit, I don't want to say disgruntled, but like he's willing, like some guys will take less to stay with the team. It sounds like he is going to explore other teams and maybe take the money, which you can't really blame anyone for doing that. And then they were saying the Chiefs are setting great with their salary cap and all that, apparently. So, I mean, if Kelsey sticks around and like a lot of they don't lose a lot, they're going to be there again, which I don't know why we'd expect them not to be when Mahomes plays in.
How do you bet against that? Like, how do you bet against that? I don't. I mean, you've got now 20 years worth of evidence that shows if you have the literal best quarterback in the league, you can be there every year, and that's what Casey has.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people love to hate. Well, we've talked about Purdy and Taylor Swift, but like Mahomes too, and I get it because like the greatest. A lot of people hated Brady too. I did.
Yes.
I liked Brady. I appreciated what he did, and like whatever, the whole Deflate Gate and those things. I don't know. There's all sorts of that stuff going on, but yeah, I mean, you can't argue who the best player in the game is at this point.
It's not. I don't think you can. But watching that Super Bowl, for like just taking it into its entirety, did he look like the best player in the game?
Mahomes?
Yeah.
I mean, with the clutch drives when they absolutely needed it, yeah. But he threw that pick. He threw
was
like bad. It was like,
oh,
dude, he does
dude.
that every once in a while.
Yes.
Too, and it's just
yeah.
What is good? It's like, are you giving away the game here? What's going on?
I don't know. Well, it felt like very Manning because that was what Manning did in the Saints Super Bowl. He lost. They were driving to win the game, and he threw a pick, and that was it.
And I don't know if you just don't see the underneath guy sometimes, but it was like right in his line of sight. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think who else, what other teams like are going to compete for a Super Bowl next year. I mean, it's hard to say with there's so much turnover on some of these teams, but like obviously like the Lions got to the NFC Championship game and it doesn't seem like they're going anywhere.
No, their roster's pretty static for the moment. So that's like they feel like they're locked in for the next couple of years. So
right. I don't know. I really like as much like I used to not like Baker Mayfield and now I think he's growing on me a little bit.
Yeah.
I just think they're going to have a regression year. I think that was sort of like a little bit of a fluke. Obviously, he played really well, but
he's a free agent though. Like he could not be on Tampa even.
I mean, they'd be stupid not to sign him.
They would
after what just happened.
But I'm just wondering, like, I mean, I don't know. Like he could be a commodity, I guess. Like he may get offers from a couple of teams. I would think. But to me, it feels like there's a competitive market for him because I feel like if he was on Minnesota, if he was on the Raiders, if he was on the Jets, like those could have been playoff teams, right? Like in the way that Tampa was. So I feel like, and I feel like he's the difference there for some of those teams.
Yeah. Speaking of the Jets, I mean, that's another story, right? Like we got
Rodgers.
I mean, he's by all accounts is coming back, right?
Yeah, at 42. When the season kicks off, 41, 42.
Yeah.
Having been to the 40s and currently residing in my 40s, it's not as good as the 30s.
Yeah, it's a little tough.
It's not as good.
Although his trainer might be a little bit better than yours.
I mean, yes, clearly. Yeah, yes. Although maybe not considering he like blew out his Achilles like 2 seconds into the season.
That's fair. So I mean, the Jets defense, you throw Aaron Rodgers in there. I still think
competitive.
Their offensive line was so bad. So it'll be interesting to see like if they're
yeah
how that goes. But I mean, they basically won a couple of games on defense alone. So that I mean, you'd think that they're going to be a lot better.
They were 7-10, right? Somewhere close to that. 6-11, 7-10.
I'm not sure. We got a time. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I mean, yes, that team felt like it was awful, and that quarterback was awful, and everybody hated him, and they still won like 7 games.
Yeah, 7-10. I mean, it was the AFC. It took 10 wins to get in, so they were not that close, but
I mean, there were 2 playoff teams in that division though. So they played 2 playoff teams twice.
it felt it felt like they were a lot worse than that.
It really does. Yeah, unquestionably, it felt like they were terrible.
Yeah.
But the Bears ended up 7-10 too, and I feel the same way. They were a shitty team.
Yeah.
So how do you explain? Like, what does that mean then? What does that record mean when you've got 2 teams at 7-10? The flipping sucked. Like, what is?
Well, it's
what kind of
interesting.
benchmark is that?
You said the Bears finished 7-10. So
Yep.
the Jets 7-10 and the Bears 7-10. The Jets had obviously their season was kind of torn apart after the first couple plays when Rodgers went down,
Yeah.
but like it was just up and down, and it's like now Zach Wilson, all this drama, like he doesn't want to be there or whatever. Like
Rodgers has to control him to play.
he had a great game, and then he had to have a terrible game,
Yeah.
and then like during the season, it seemed like Rodgers was always on the sidelines. But if you look into it, he was actually not around that much. He was just kind of making appearances on TV and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then you compare that to like what the Bears did. So the Bears were like pretty terrible for the first half of the year. I mean, we were making fun of them every week, and then their defense got healthy and they traded for Sweat, and then they were like, no one could score on them. Like they were, I don't know what they ended up, but they probably finished the year 4-2 or 4-3 or 5-3 or something.
They had I believe they had a winning record down the stretch. So they probably went like 6-5, something like that.
Yeah. And now, I mean, so you got the 1 pick, and obviously everyone's got an opinion on what they're going to do with that.
I think opinions are coalescing around drafting Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I think so too. But other teams on the upside, obviously what Jordan Love did, it's like, how do I can't see a way they don't make the playoffs.
The Bears?
No, the Packers.
The Pack. Like I saw on TikTok, somebody had him in the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Love seems to have that. Annoyingly, he seems to have that sort of like.
Yeah.
If they blitz me and it seems like I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I'm just gonna flip it off my back foot, and like somehow it always goes to one of my guys, sort of a thing.
He had some magic towards the end of the season, man. They won a playoff game,
right,
on the road against the Cowboys, who were
so you got
a good team.
Yeah. Other interesting stories. So you got Harbaugh with Herbert now, and there's that whole.
Oh yeah, so playoffs. Yeah, do you think they're a playoff team? The Chargers.
I mean, it's so hard to say. What did they finish? 5, and they were
6. I think they won 6 games.
And then
6, 7. Did they also?
Bosa? So Joey Bosa had been hurt a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he's probably not going to be a Charger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it sounded like he's going to explore free agency and just take the bag. So
it's weird.
But yeah, I mean, Harbaugh made a Super Bowl in 3 years in the NFL previously. Like obviously he knows what he's doing. He doesn't have to worry about recruiting violations.
Nope.
But I like Herbert. Harbaugh seems like a weirdo. Like Jim Harbaugh seems like a weirdo, sort of.
Yeah.
I don't really know what to think of him, but he's obviously a good coach. So
they were 5-12. The Chargers.
Yeah, they were like 4-4. It felt like at one point.
I mean, the team gave up. The team gave up. They gave up on that coach.
They got a little stale.
Lee.
They were more staley than they were before.
Yeah.
That was bad. What else? Russell Wilson, where's he going?
The booth?
Is he?
No, I don't. I just don't. I think I don't like who. Like.
So they have to.
Oh, he's under contract. That contract is massive.
So Peyton's obviously staying. So he's just going to be a backup, right? Because like Peyton gave up on him. I think.
Yeah, but they don't have another QB on that roster that you want to start. So what are they gonna? Maybe they trade. Maybe they try to move up in the draft.
I gotta look at mock drafts or some analysis because like that. I mean, there's a lot of interesting like what is this team gonna do sort of a thing.
There are, but the top 3 teams in the draft are all need quarterbacks. Bears, Commanders, Patriots are all quarterback starved.
Yeah,
potentially or maybe the Bears is a question mark, but so maybe they could sneak in, but
yeah. So there's
hard.
The that most probable landing spot for Fields if they trade Fields is the Falcons, apparently.
That name has been there all season, it seems like.
Which who did they hire? Raheem Morris?
That's right. They promoted because he was the interim, wasn't he? Or he wasn't in it? No, he wasn't in. I don't know.
No, he was the defensive coordinator for the. Why can't I think of it?
He was the head coach at Tampa Bay, I think, at one point. A long time ago. Really is a really young coach. He was.
Oh, the Rams. He just came from the Rams. He was their
The
defensive
DC,
coordinator.
Yeah. Or
Interesting.
was he the head coach at Denver? I
Well,
don't remember.
let's segue onto the Rams here. They still
as
got
well.
Stafford.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
always got a fighter's chance. I don't know. The whole thing with them is they traded away so many picks, but then they still made the playoffs. So I think they're going to be feeling the effects of that still for a few more years, but maybe they can piece it together and make a playoff run.
I mean, they've got. I mean, I think right now the second best coach in the league, and might even be the best coach. Just doesn't have the success right now to do it. If there's anybody out there right now who can survive like a quarterback transition, so from like one good QB who gets old and retires into another good QB, I think it's McVay. Like I feel like he is football savvy enough to draft a good quarterback in the way that like with Mahomes, they went and got Mahomes. Their scout identified him and said, "This is the kid. This is the kid."
Yeah, when he was like a freshman.
Yes, yeah, at Texas Tech, wherever he went,
Yeah.
It wasn't him. I think it was Tech. But the scouts were locked in on him from like day one, and they convinced Reed, and then Reed was locked in. They knew. And to me, McVay is another type of guy who understands the sport well enough to go, "This is the kid."
And didn't Mahomes go like 8th overall? Like how did
He was 10th, I think.
How
and they
did
traded
like
to get him. Or
9
11th.
teams had no clue that he was
Yep.
going to be a stud?
The Bears had the second pick. And they traded. They had the third pick, and they traded to the second pick to draft Trubisky.
That was the same draft?
Yes, that was the same draft.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson was in that draft too. Like, and they
He
all
went, what, 1?
No, he went after Trubisky. He went before Mahomes, but after Trubisky, I believe. It's just so disappointing.
The Colts, Richardson will be healthy, but
Yes.
see how he progresses. I mean, Stroud, what he did.
Yes.
You don't see the Texans getting worse.
No.
With Ryans, and I can't believe Ryans didn't get the coach of the year.
Yeah, so that was the two. Shane Steichen got it. Probably because of Shane Steichen. Probably because he did it with a backup, would be my guess.
They didn't even make the. Are you sure he got it?
Because
they didn't even make.
Oh no, or was it Stefanski?
Stefanski, that's what it was.
Was it Stefanski?
And I get it's a regular season award, but when they got the doors blown off against the Texans, it was just like,
yeah, not a good look. Not a good look. You can't throw 2 pick sixes though.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's not going to help your team.
You can't win a game. Like, I don't care how good your defense, and that defense is fucking good. You can't do that and win a game. Bengals next year.
Oh yeah.
And all this talk.
Burrow being healthy. He's the one guy that beat Mahomes.
That's exactly where I was going to go. Who's the heir? Is it Allen? Is the true? Is it Jackson? Is the Herbert? It's like, what about the one guy who's actually done it?
He's the one quarterback where.
And it was on the road too, because they were the underdogs.
Yeah. You don't want him having the ball last because he's like a Mahomes, where you feel like he's just going to win the game.
That kid's a winner.
He'll be healthy. My son will be happy about that.
Yeah.
Although he liked how Browning played the last half of the year, and he was kind of asking me, "You think Browning might be the starter next year?" I'm like, definitely not. But that's an interesting story. Will he just be a backup? Someone would take a chance on him, I think.
I agree, but the thing with Burrow is he's got that injury history, unfortunately. Because when he came in the league, he had a big knee, right. and that took his season away. And then this past season, he also started injured. There was an injury, and then he didn't play the whole season because they were not competitive to start. And then when he came back, and then he dislocated his finger. He broke and dislocated his finger. So I don't think they get rid of him because of that. I think they keep him.
Yeah.
Because of his injury history. That's the drawback to Burrow. Like if he could stay healthy, that is such an exciting race next year. Mahomes and Burrow.
Yeah. Fabian Moreau. Or no, Foster Moreau.
Who's that?
He's a tight end for the Falcons or something like
I
that.
thought you were like he was like an author from the early 1900s. You read any Foster Moreau lately?
He does sound like that, or like a painter in the.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know what we call this. We're just jumping around and trying to get to every team, but the Jaguars we haven't talked about. They had an epic collapse.
Oh my God.
Like
to win the division for the whole year?
They needed to win 2 of their last like 7 games and they couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
Their defense got really bad. They had Christian Kirk got hurt. I don't know. This is going to be a huge year for like if they miss the playoffs again, I think Peterson's probably gone. And then it's like Lawrence.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe he's not quite what we thought he would be, but
he hasn't been.
There's a lot of question marks there, but a lot of, I guess, maybe reason to be optimistic if you're a Jags fan.
Cousins doesn't come back. Both Fields and Lawrence are available. Who do you pick if you could have your pick, who do you want on the Vikings next year?
To be honest, I don't want either one of those guys.
Yeah, right? That quarterback draft.
There's rumors that the Vikings are going to try to get one. I don't know. Like, it could be a complete rumor. I heard they liked Drake May, but what are they drafting, though? They'd have to trade up. So, I don't know. Who knows? I feel like, I guess I don't know. I said this a little while ago that someone you think would want Caleb Williams so bad that they're going to give up a ton of picks to the Bears.
I think so.
But at the same time, it's like, it seems like the Bears are kind of committed, but the draft is 2 months away. Who knows?
I think those offers will come. I think the Bears will turn them down. I really think in the back of my mind that Tepper is going to try and go back and get that pick. Like, it feels like a very David Tepper move to, after having given it up last week, he would give up even more capital to get it back because of the bullshit surrounding Caleb Williams and all the hype and everything. I could see him. I'll give you my first year for my next 4 years of first round picks. Give me that. I could see that. That would be amazing.
And then draft Caleb Williams without talking to him. And Caleb Williams is like, I don't want to. It's the only place I don't want to play. Yeah, that seems about right.
That feels amazing. I can't wait.
So Belichick still doesn't have a job, right?
No, he doesn't. And smartest decision the NFL world has made in, I don't even know. It is the thing that Belichick did best. He never overpaid for past performance. Never. Got rid of Tom Brady. Got rid of Lawyer Malloy. Got rid of, I don't know, Willie McGinnis. Pick a great Patriots player. And Belichick showed him the fucking door. Belichick is past his whatever knowledge is there is having difficulty getting translated to the field. You don't hire Matt Patricia to do anything, including run your offense. You don't mess around with your QBs the way he messed around with his QBs. Like, just switching them in games. Like, what are you doing?
So I could be wrong on this, but I think his only offer is like a consultant for the Patriots. Like they said they'd keep him on if he wanted to do that. He's obviously not going to go do TV because if you ever watched an interview with him, it's like one word and straight faced, and he's not giving you any information. So, and Vrabel, did he take a coordinator job or something?
No, the last I heard about Vrabel is that he was looking at the college. The college programs are circling him, which makes no sense. What I heard from was in Tennessee that he was too intimidating.
Yeah, I did hear that too. You don't understand how big of a guy he is, and they didn't want.
They're big.
What is this a real thing?
Like, but your coach on the Minnesota, he's 6'5".
Yeah,
is he too intimidating?
He doesn't have the broad chest.
No, that's true. He's a very slender man,
and he's not always pissed off when they show him when they scan to him during the game. So Shanahan fired Steve Wilkes after one season.
Yeah.
This is saying Vrabel, who knows, maybe Vrabel ends up for the Niners, but
Well, he's not a defense. Oh yeah, he is. He was a linebacker, wasn't he?
those two,
Ugh.
that could be interesting.
could.
As far as like Shanahan and Vrabel, like most pissed off looking coaches during games, those two are probably 1 and 2. Who else is just like grimacing all the time when they scan to him?
Well, I mean, obviously Belichick's gone, so maybe
But he just seems like he doesn't know what the hell's going on. Like he just seems like he's not even paying.
I mean, that's a good. I mean, it's a good point. He does look. I mean, look at the picture. Nobody else can see it, but yeah, he's a bit of a sourpuss. It's still weird to me that he didn't get a job. He was out of nowhere. They hired him, and I think people are like, "What the? That's a dumb hire." And then he proceeds to like pull together a Tennessee Titans team that was competitive for like 4 or 5 years out of nowhere with a quarterback that was sort of on the trash heap. And how do you not want that? I don't know, because he yells a lot.
So, yeah, I don't know. Who else haven't we talked? The Raiders, I think, are gonna go after a quarterback, but I could be wrong there. I mean, you got Garoppolo, you got O'Donnell, Brodonnell, whatever.
It was what was it? That was an Irish sounding. It was like O'Gallagher or something.
Aiden O'Connell.
There it is. Yeah. Wait, and they hired Antonio Pierce, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So he didn't make the same mistake.
Yeah. So I could see them giving up way too much to try to go get a quarterback and having it not work out. But maybe that's just because I'm used to the. Who did they just fire? McDaniel. Maybe I'm just used to that guy making bad decisions.
Makes sense.
What else do we got? The Vikings, I don't know. It sounded like Cousins was going to take less money to stay, but I don't know.
Give more money to go.
It got kind of quiet around that. Jefferson has straight out came out and said he wants a max contract when the time comes, and if it's not in Minnesota, he just wants the team to appreciate him. So I thought that was a little. I mean, yeah, he's worth it. He's clearly one of the top 2 receivers for sure, I would say, but what was their record without him? It's kind of like
they won games. They had a winning record, I think, when he was out.
I'm going to be in the minority on this viewpoint, but I think if he's going to cripple your pocketbook, and you look at what you were able to do. Now, granted, you'd want to keep Cousins. You're not going to get rid of Jefferson and bring in some other quarterback and have it work well right away, sort of a thing. But if he's going to try to take all the money, I don't know. They went through that with Cousins where it kind of hurt him in other areas. I don't know. I feel like he doesn't really want to be there that bad. You kind of just maybe have to part ways, but another team. So the Bills are just kind of the Bills. They're going to make the playoffs and lose to someone. Probably the Chiefs.
Sean McDermott.
I don't know. We're getting close to talking about everyone. Who do we have left?
I mean, do we need to talk about the Cardinals, or do we need to talk about the Saints, or do we need to talk about
for sure your favorite coach, Dennis Allen?
Wait, no, didn't they fire? They fired? No, didn't they fire him?
I don't know. I don't think
I
so.
don't know. They kept him. Why?
Dennis, do you still have a job? Yeah, he's still the coach of the Saints.
Oh, that's weird.
I mean, I don't know. Like, they're just good enough to maybe sniff the playoffs, and that's about it. Like, I don't know
what they did this year.
Kamara's getting older. Carr is still who he always was. Like, he's just not consistent enough. I don't know how many year contract he signed, but they just seem like, where's the upside? Like, if I'm a Saints fan, I just don't feel great about it. But
I mean, maybe they can win that division though, because that division was open till the last game, right? And Tampa needed to win the game on the last day to win the division.
That's a good point.
And I think the Saints did that too. If the Saints had won, wouldn't they have won? Maybe.
I think the Bucks controlled their own destiny in the last week. The Saints had a weird way. So So if the Bucks lost and they won, they got the division, but they also had a chance to get a wild card
That's
with
right.
some sort of goofy.
There were,
winner.
yeah, 3 or 4 teams needed to lose and such and such. But yeah, they were in it at least till the kind of the end. But I don't see that Saints team, if all of that had happened, I don't see them winning the playoff game that Baker Mayfield. I don't see that victory happening. So
No.
I mean,
Although I don't know would they have played the Eagles?
I mean,
well, they
if they had won that division,
Oh, yeah, they
then
would've,
would
yeah.
they would have.
I agree, but the Eagles were so broken too. Like that was weird. What do you do?
That team-
That's
We haven't
haven't really
talked
talked about them,
Mhm.
but
Kelsey's coming.
so
back.
there was obviously some rifts with the coaching staff. So Sirianni just ended up canning a bunch of people, and it's like you either fire the head coach or you let the head coach get rid of what he thinks is the problem. And after making it to the Super Bowl, I guess they figured he still,
viable.
yeah, he still can do it. You got Hurts.
Who
Sounds
didn't look
like
very
Jason
good, though.
Kelsey wants to come back.
Yeah.
I don't know. AJ Brown seemed very like pissed off towards the end of the year. There was pictures and videos of him like at some MMA event while his team was playing. Well, he was hurt.
Oh
but
yeah, okay.
he was like, wasn't even there. I don't know.
Who is he? Aaron Rodgers? Come
And then the Cowboys,
on.
we don't have like we had them pegged the whole year, just kind of frauds, blow a bunch of teams out, and then lose when you actually have to play a tough team. Dolphins kind of did the same thing, but they're interesting. I mean,
But interesting coach,
McDaniels, still a young coach, did some good things. I mean, their playoff game was the Ice Bowl against the Chiefs. So it's kind of like a tough, but
I think our background is for the video game Starfield.
oh yeah. I mean, Starfield, they're going to be good this year. No,
Sorry, I just noticed
that's all
that.
right.
Apologies.
Yeah, so I mean, we said Belichick's gone. I mean, who did the Patriots hire?
Gerard Mayo.
Oh yeah,
He
was a
coordinator. Yes, but he was a linebacker for the Patriots back in the day.
right.
Yes, and then he had been on the staff. I mean, they must have known that succession plan must have been in place for a long time because they didn't waste. It was
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You keep like their defense was still really good, even though they were awful offensively.
complete
I don't
mystery.
know. Do you draft a quarterback and start Zappy, or what do you do there? I don't know.
You know, that's the age-old question for the NFL. It's like, do you draft a guy and can he start now? And that has worked, right? That has worked. CJ Stroud. Or do you draft a guy and have him sit? And that has also worked. Cite Aaron Rodgers, cite Pat Mahomes. Like it is all up to the personality that you have on the field, the coaching staff, and the guy you draft. And it changes, the equation changes every time. And I think I don't know the answer to that unless you get the specifics. I would say look at the Bears as an example. I don't think there's anything in place infrastructure wise for success in either scenario. Right? Like they don't have the talent at the organizational level to get the right talent and to develop the right talent. And I don't think they have the coaching staff on the field to mobilize it in a way that's effective. So they're failing in both ends there. A different organization might have more luck. The Patriots is interesting because you would have said that organizationally that structure was in place before what happened with Mac Jones. And now you look at it and you go, there's nothing there offensively that's going to develop that talent. And there's nothing there offensively that's going to allow a good talent, a ready talent to be successful immediately. I think there's failure there. I don't see. So if I'm looking 5 years out, this is not a scenario where I see Gerard Mayo still the head coach of that team.
Write that one down. Time capsule that one.
Yeah, sorry. Is this the league is showing, I think, over and over again, defensive coaches, if they're not handed the right quarterback, they cannot get the right quarterback. Look Belichick, look Tomlin.
Yeah. The one division we haven't talked much about is the AFC North, and they had the best overall record, I think.
They did. 3 teams in the playoffs.
So obviously, Lamar couldn't get it done again when it seemed like this really was going to be his year. Like they had the most complete team, and they just
look so good.
You run into Mahomes, like no one beat him when it mattered. So
no, but that happens. It seems like in the NFL. How often does the best team just not even make it to the Super Bowl? The most dominant regular season team doesn't win. I feel like it happens quite a bit. Actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, you run into a Mahomes or
Yeah.
like, like in a 1-game scenario, someone game plans really well. And I felt like the Chiefs really did that game. Like they just controlled the ball.
Yeah.
They flustered them and, it ended up sort of close, but it really wasn't that close. They were never within, I think it was 7-7 and then it was 14-7. I don't think they got within less, fewer than 7 points after that. But you got to think the Ravens will definitely be in the mix.
Yeah.
It's hard to say how good they'll be. Their D coordinator took the Seattle job, I think. McDonald.
Yes.
And then Monken, their offensive coordinator, I think is still there, but I haven't paid that close of attention. Then you got the Browns. They got a mess with I don't know what they're gonna do with Watson or whatever, but they
own a lot
made
of money.
the playoffs and they got a really good defense. I don't know where they're at free agent wise with that defense or whatever, but and then the Steelers
they need a
got
quarterback.
well, yeah, they have a real question mark on what are they gonna do?
I mean, they need a quarterback.
You absolutely, I think you have to draft one.
Yes.
And then you just have to evaluate.
Yeah. Because I mean, Pickett's probably not the guy, right?
I don't know. They had the awful offensive coordinator, and then Pickett was hurt, and then he wasn't good enough to start. They just have a mess. I don't know what you do with that.
I mean, it is again. It's like is Tomlin the coach in 3 or 4 years because they can't figure the quarterback out. And I mean, there's nobody been more consistent than Tomlin over the last 15 years in terms of record, and made the playoffs again with scraps. But
scrap heap.
Yeah, but he hasn't won the knock is what he hasn't won a playoff game in 8 or 9 years, something like that, 7, 8 years. He's got to figure out the quarterback position, and I don't know that he can. Or he's got to hire somebody who can, and that's hard too.
Yeah, I don't know. That seems like a team stuck in neutral for sure.
Yes,
as well. So I, as a Vikings fan, I really hope they trade up and they go get they shouldn't go to 1 and try to get Williams. I don't think I don't know. It depends who you talk to. A lot of people are saying Caleb Williams is definitely the best quarterback in this draft, but those things you don't always know. I don't know. Drake May seems like someone they should maybe go after, but
I mean, even if that is true, he's the best quarterback. What does that even mean? So what if it's a shitty draft class? It doesn't mean any of them are going to pan out. I mean, look at Lawrence, right? Like he was, I think, still probably definitively the best quarterback in that draft.
Yeah, he was like a once in like a 5-year.
That's what they said.
Sort of quarterback at the time.
But that hasn't panned out. It's why when I listen to the sports radio here in town, and you got one of the broadcasters is like, "Oh my God, I'm so excited! I'm so excited!" It's like, why? What have you been paying attention to over the last 30 years in the NFL that shows you that drafting the number 1 is any surety that you're going to be successful? It's not. It's not even close. That's why I would rather have the draft capital.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to offer you 4 first-round picks over the next 4 years, fucking take it. Just take it.
Yeah.
And find your quarterback later in the draft.
Well, the Vikings have tried to find a quarterback later in the draft.
That's it's the same problem, right? Evaluation. You got to be able to do it.
And these guys come in and they don't know which hand they're supposed to throw with. I don't even remember the one from a couple years ago, but he's not on the team anymore. I don't remember.
That's surprising.
Jaren Hall, I mean, it was kind of like he never should have started that game against the Packers, but the game was so fast, like he didn't have a clue what he was doing. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that was a great pick. Yeah. So, I mean, I think at some point you got to try one in the first round and see if you hit it. Maybe consult with the Packers since every time they draft one, they seem to get it right. And see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Who haven't we talked about? I feel
we have talked longer about nothing. I mean, we were like, we came here, do you have maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes? It's no big deal if we end early. And it's like we're an hour in, and it's like, man, we didn't get to basketball.
lot of useless knowledge about.
This was
but
incredibly decisive commentary.
but there's like, I think what I realized is there's like 20 of the 32 teams that if you make the right moves, you have like you did enough this year to like be optimistic about it. And I think a lot of teams, well, I mean, this is every year, I'm sure, but just like if you make the right decisions and you put the pieces together, like a lot of teams could be very competitive.
Yeah.
But
That's why the NFL is so exciting.
sort of is like the most general no shit statement ever. So whatever, take it.
Yeah.
Take it for what it's worth. Chiefs are the champs.
Mm.
It seems like there's like no off season for the NFL. It's like people are already, trying to figure out
Draft.
who they're going to draft, and then there's whatever. It just seems like
Training
it never
camp.
ends, sort of a thing. But so we got my focus. Your focus is kind of shifts to college basketball at this point. You got conference tournaments starting within the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
March Madness, the first weekend is actually about as late as it gets. I think it's like St. Patty's Day-ish.
It's the 21st and 22nd, I believe.
So we can't really, I mean, guessing the lines in college basketball doesn't really make sense. There's too many games. And to be honest, if you go look at kenpom.com and like do a little math, you can basically figure out every spread there is. And obviously if there's injuries and whatnot, key injuries, you adjust it a little bit, but it's not that hard to know what these spreads are going to be based on the quality of teams. So maybe we'll talk a little college basketball at some point. I don't know what we would do with that. Maybe when conference tournaments get closer, we could do some sort of
Pick them.
like the major conferences, like who to look out for. It's kind of, I mean, UConn and Purdue seem like the best teams, but
Looks like you're like Obi-Wan. You're all like clouded out, like you're a force manifestation.
I am Obi-Wan, ghost of Obi-Wan. So yeah, I mean, but so I mentioned kenpom.com because in my opinion, that's the best predictor of like who are the best teams. Just like an advanced stats thing. If you go look at it, it's just a bunch of numbers and it can be a little bit hard to understand if you don't dig into it. But it basically ranks the teams based on like what they've done and tells you who should be most successful like in March. And like 95% of the time, one of the top 10 teams at the end of the season in those ratings will win the championship. Like even last year, UConn they were a 4 seed, but they were always like a top 10. Well, they had a little spell in the middle of the season where they weren't playing very good, but they were top 10 in this KenPom rankings most of the season. And when it all ended, I think they finished one or two. So I always find that interesting. Like Auburn they're kind of deep. They can beat you in a lot of ways, but they're projected a 3 or 4 seed. But if you look at the KenPom rankings, they're a top 5 team. And then, I feel like Tennessee kind of turned the corner. They're not just a defensive team anymore. I don't know how you can pick against UConn. You got Purdue sitting there like they always are. Like, are they going to blow it again?
Last 4 years, man, Purdue has been pretty great.
Yeah.
And they just have not done it in the tournament.
And then, Houston, same thing. Like Houston's like a Purdue. They're really good. They're like a 1 or a 2.
Good program down there.
And they get to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8 and they just can't keep it rolling.
Last year they had that injury though, right? Their point guard was injured.
Yeah, he was out. Yeah. And now he's gone and they're still playing well. But, North Carolina is very good.
Yeah, North Carolina.
But they just lost to Syracuse on the road. So
everybody though, that's been happening a lot. Like top 10 teams losing on the road has been like endemic this year.
Yeah.
Because Kansas did it too. Like they lost.
They're terrible on the road.
Yeah, they've been awful.
Yeah.
I don't like Bill Self, so that's fine.
But yeah, when you get to the tournament, everything's neutral, right?
That's true.
So the top programs usually travel better and kind of have somewhat of a home court type of feel, but yeah, you never really know. I feel like it's more up in the air. Maybe than usual, but at the same time, it's like UConn's number one. They haven't lost in a long time. Like they're probably, the team, the favorite, I would say at this point. But yeah, I mean, anything can happen in March. There's probably, I don't know, 12 to 15 teams. I would say that if they win it, you wouldn't be totally surprised. So that's the impromptu college basketball preview after the let's jump around to every NFL team and see what the hell they got going on for next season preview. And I think we're out of previews for this one. If you have suggestions on what would be cool to hear about in college basketball, post it in the comments. If I think we'll probably plan on doing the NFL again next year. If you'd rather us make a stand and make picks and say, like, this is what I really like. We kind of did that hit and miss, but not really a set format. If you'd rather us do that, we could do that as well. One thing I thought of doing, although this is going to take a lot of time, is going back through and just kind of finding where we did definitively say we liked one side or the other and kind of do a recap on that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that'll happen or not.
Yeah, we're pretty lazy.
Yeah.
Sounds like
a little bit lazy. And we can be because we're on this planet with nothing to do.
That sounds like Starfield.
All right, enough nonsense. I hope we didn't bore you to death. The NFL is a wrap.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Go Vikings!
Go Bears!